Welcome to iFinance. Today we're going to talk about Tesla's Robotaxi network. We'll touch on competitors, viability, costs, and more. This is a very controversial topic for investors and important for the future of humanity. Enjoy. One of the main points regarding Tesla and its proposed robo-taxi network is that it is not viable, and shorts have made a great point regarding this. In fact, they think that Elon Musk is simply lying and promising the sky but will never happen. In a way, what they're saying has some merits. After all, developing this type of technology will likely require a lot of R&D expenditures, and these investments will likely be more difficult for companies like Tesla, which have less money and require constant investments and raising capital. So, for example, if you look at the chart, the amount of cash that Tesla invests in R&D is roughly $3.8 billion. However, you can compare this with other companies, like for example Google, Apple, and even General Motors. The investments they make is at least 10 times bigger, if not more. Obviously, these type of investments for other projects as well as autonomous driving. But the point remains, these other companies have much more solvency, much more money to invest in projects like this. However, at the same time, it is important to realize that Tesla does have a lead in automation, at least for now. And this is evident because of the amount of miles that have been driven in Tesla's autopilot, or what Elon Musk calls it, full self-driving. We don't have the precise figures right now, but we do know, at least from what Tesla has released, that they have over 1 billion miles right now. And it is forecasted to grow by a wide margin. In fact, it is forecasted to almost double, or even more than double, by 2020. So the amount of miles that Tesla has collectively driven in full self-driving is outstanding and is by far much greater than its competition with Waymo or General Motors. And this type of research is really good. It will have a positive impact in the future in humanity. It will save a lot of lives and it will unlock time that is wasted driving and will allow it to become productive. You'll be able to do productive things while waiting in your car until you reach your destination. So full self-driving and autonomous vehicles will increase the world's productivity and safety by an order of magnitude at least. And so it is exciting to see that Tesla is leading the way in this sense. But as I mentioned before, the difference between the amount of miles driven in autopilot with Tesla and even the runner-up is staggering. Tesla has over 1 billion miles, while Waymo only has about 1 million. Obviously, these figures are likely to be a bit higher now because we're a little bit further into the year, but still, we can see that Tesla has a massive lead in at least miles driven in autopilot. It is also worth noting that there are many companies that are trying to get into this market. In fact, even Uber and Apple are trying to get into self-driving vehicles because the market opportunity for this is outstanding. So the fact that Tesla is leading the way in this market is, as an investor, is something that you have to be excited about. But furthermore, from now on, Tesla's FSD should continue to improve because of its growing data. And further improvements from now on will likely require less investments than in the past. And this is because perfecting software through big data and AI is much easier and less expensive than, say, investing in capital expenditures and building new factories or trying out new equipment. So I think that robo-taxis are definitely possible. In fact, many companies are already validating this. They know that at least in theory, this is completely viable, which in a way validates what Elon Musk is saying. Whether or not you believe in him, if this was a pipe dream, as shorts claim, then nobody else would be trying to get into this market. However, we see that there are many companies that are making great efforts to catch up with Tesla. But at any rate, it is important to realize that we as investors have to find which one of these companies is the one that's going to lead the autonomous market. So the market opportunity for Tesla is huge. In fact, if you see ARK's investment management forecasts for this sector, they're expecting that around 2020 to 2030, revenues will grow from zero to roughly $12 trillion. And in the process, Tesla should be able to capture most of this market, or at least even if it captures only 10% of this market, we're talking about roughly $1.2 trillion in sales over the next 10 to 15 years, which is amazing if you think about it. Regardless of how you discount this value, the present value of what Tesla already is developing, it's outstanding. It far exceeds its current market cap. And this is assuming that Tesla only captures roughly 10%, which in reality, at least if you look at it at what Apple actually managed to capture, Apple captured roughly 20% of the smartphone category. So it is likely that Tesla will probably capture around 20% as well, and in which case we're talking about $2.4 trillion in sales until 2030. And that would obviously make Tesla a multi-trillion dollar company. And Elon Musk, he touched on the potential, the vast potential that this technology has. It would make a car an investment as well. It is an asset that will be able to produce rather than just depreciate over time. And right now, obviously, it sounds crazy. And shorts have called Elon Musk crazy for proposing this. In fact, some people have called him a fraud. But the truth is, if you're selling a car that instead of only depreciating, it is actually producing something, then the valuation of the asset will change completely. And in that sense, it could resemble property or say a house. Instead, when you sell a house, when you buy a house, you have to take into account how much you can get in rent yearly from that house. And that is baked into the valuation of the house itself. So with cars, what you only do is you depreciate it over time. But if suddenly the equation changes and now cars are able to produce income, then you have to bake that into the calculation. And obviously, a Model 3 right now with full self-driving capabilities is likely going to appreciate in value going forward. So that makes complete sense. And whether or not you agree with the figures Tesla presented, depending on which inputs you use, what figures you assume, you can indeed get this net present value for each robotaxi of around $200,000. And if you assume that there's 1 million of these robotaxis in circulation, then you can realize that Tesla would be worth roughly $200 billion, which is already about 5 times what it's worth right now. So again, it is staggering the potential that Tesla as a stock has right now. Now, you also have to have in mind that to produce these robotaxis, you will probably have to build infrastructure, at least to produce them in a large scale. And in this sense, I think Google is at a little bit of a disadvantage. They will either have to invest themselves in factories like this, or what is also possible is that they will lease their technology to other companies, which it makes a little bit difficult to forecast exactly how the dynamic is going to be in this evolving market, because it might be that Google limits itself to simply leasing its technology to other players, kind of like what happened with the Android operating system for cell phones and smartphones, whereas Tesla has its proprietary technology, could be compared to Apple with its iOS. So maybe it will happen something similar to that, and I think both systems will probably be able to coexist, at least in the foreseeable future. But still, there are profound differences between what Tesla has right now and what Google is developing. Tesla sets itself apart from the rest of the pack because it uses cameras and supplementary sensors for its automatic pilot. However, Waymo and other competitors use LiDAR, plus other sensors that they use in their autonomous vehicles. And the problem with LiDAR is that it costs a lot more than simple cameras which Tesla uses. For example, LiDAR can cost from $7,000 to $75,000 per car. And so obviously simple solution with cameras and supplementary sensors is much cheaper than that. And it is likely that LiDAR will make these cars much more expensive than they need to be, and that this could represent in the long term a competitive advantage for Tesla. After all, there is a massive difference in prices and costs between Tesla and the competition going forward. This is not to mention that other car makers are specialized and have the infrastructure necessary to build internal combustion vehicles. However, an electric vehicle is completely different. So the infrastructure that they have will have to change substantially, and this will require capital expenditures and additional investments to make their factories viable to this new type of car. And in that sense, Tesla already has a good lead. So I definitely think that it is likely that Tesla will face competitors that are operating in joint ventures or some type of alliances instead of simply competing one to one. But the really cool thing about Tesla is that it has already the infrastructure required to produce these robotaxis. In fact, it is already doing so. And the hardware is already there for these robotaxis. Right now, the only constraint for full self-driving capabilities is software. And this software is getting updated and upgraded continuously through big data and AI. And in that sense, Tesla already has a competitive advantage as well, because it has invested heavily in hardware, namely its chip. Tesla has the most advanced chip designed explicitly for full self-driving, and this technology outclasses all of its competitors right now. But the really cool thing as well is that older models can be easily retrofitted with this new hardware. But the really cool thing is that all of these older models from Tesla can also be easily retrofitted with these new chips. And in a sense, it would update it very easily and become full self-driving as well. So let that sink in. Tesla already has everything it needs for full self-driving and the creation of a robotaxi network. Right now, it is only a matter of time until Tesla has enough data to make its AI good enough for full self-driving under any circumstances. So stay tuned, because in part 2 I'll talk more about Tesla's AI, a little bit of its competition, other types of costs, and its overall viability. Thank you very much.